Well, this is a little bit depressing. My first foray into a legitimate October video, and it's not on anything horrific. Nor is it anything dark or creepy or anything of that sort. Basically, completely out of place for spooky month. But screw it. I'm talking about the movie Stepmom. If you don't know what that is, I don't really blame you. No one really talks about it. If you want to know though, it's a 1998 drama directed by filmmaker Chris Columbus. And, up until now I hadn't actually seen the film in its entirety for almost 5 years, and the last time I viewed it, I was 14 years old, so I considered it just a boring mess with no real lasting power. I was able to tolerate lengthy films, dramatic or otherwise, so the film might have done something wrong when I was about to revisit this. I kind of went in expecting that, but seeing it now as an adult, it's definitely not as boring or torturous as I remember. Again, I was just young, and now that I've actually kind of gone through my own scenarios and actually discovered some of my own passions, this definitely appeals to me a little bit more. And yeah, it's maybe my newfound research through interviews with the director, with one in particular featuring him somewhat detesting the final result.
Yeah. And I basically was sitting in a director's chair watching these performances. You watch Susan Sarandon, you walk to her and you say, "Susan, can you bring it down a little bit?" And you go and sit in your chair, and I felt I was getting stale, artistically stale.
I don't hate the movie as much as I used to. And I've seen worse drama movies in recent times, especially after this one. So by comparison, this is easily one of the better ones I've seen. To start off, I'll say that the direction and acting is on point. It's clear that he definitely knew what he was doing. Everybody actually really gave it their all, especially our two leads, Isabel, played by Julia Roberts, and Jackie, played by Susan Sarandon. And just by mentioning those names, you probably know what kind of movie this is. It was definitely one of those big drama movies at the time, and was definitely bound to get some kind of award recognition. I mean, Susan Sarandon had already won an Oscar before this, so yeah, of course this was going to get some attention. And it's clear just from their delivery alone that they are cutting deep into their psyches in order to convey the right emotions. And like in other notable Columbus films, the emotional pull is crucial in the performances. Isabel, being a passionate photographer who has almost lost her direction due to the new hectic life she has entered, especially as an extra layer that makes her more than just the new girlfriend archetype. And definitely, as someone who's also kind of losing their essence in photography especially, and just scrambling so much. Even now, I'm meeting mementos, I kind of do that as well due to all the constant change in lifestyles. I could definitely relate to her on a certain level, especially as a I wouldn't say struggling artist, but someone who definitely has it all, but just can't really seem to find any control over it. And it works in great contrast to the more natural landscape heavy Jackie, who lives in a much more extravagant house near the woods, as opposed to Isabel, who's in an elaborate apartment in the middle of New York City. And later on, we learn that Jackie has an intense secret that she's kept from her family for so long, because she doesn't want to devastate them in any way. That Susan Sarandon's really acting like somebody who's really doing the absolute best to be as happy as they can and spend as much time with her family as much as possible. It's not because she's trying to get back with them because Isabel's taking them away from her. No, it's because she's been battling with cancer for some time, and she didn't really want to tell the family right away, because it would just make all those times just more treacherous for them if they were to spend a lot of time with her, and they really wouldn't want her to go, having everything be at the last second, or at least before a time of uncertainty when you don't know when she's gonna die. That's when she tells them. And I feel like that's really the main thing I believe the film does best at, is creating that odd sense of urgency and just this kind of chaotic environment, even though it's a very tame, kind of slow movie, which maybe it is just because I kind of grew up and had a better understanding of it now, but that's exactly why I feel like I've related to this a lot more, because I do believe that in life we do go through all that kind of crazy shit. There's really barely any time to kind of mellow out or anything, and especially when a lot of new people are in our lives and we're trying to readjust and make bonds, especially in relation to family. You definitely sense that in the emotions of the characters. I should also mention as well, the kids do an amazing job. The kid Ben is fucking hilarious. I mean that honestly, he does kind of just exist purely to provide some comic relief in the film, but at the same time he really is the most innocent of this whole thing, and definitely provides more of that whimsical charm and that kind of perspective of the kid who's really just trying to enjoy his childhood while he can, as opposed to Anna, who is greatly aware of the impending scenario she's found herself in with this new family drama. And my goodness, the things she says in this really fucking cut deep. Like, my God.
You do not run out on your mother.
No, that's your job.
I wouldn't really necessarily say the string that holds everything together, but she's definitely kind of the one just sort of observing everything and also having her own problems to deal with. And, you know, because she has technically she has two different maternal mother figures now, she really does kind of flip-flop between the two in terms of advice. And there's definitely different outcomes from that, especially when she's dealing with this really mean boy that she was dating. And that's also where we get a pretty great contrast between Jackie and Isabel as well. While Jackie is definitely more straightforward, just ignore him, then Isabel is definitely giving her more of this brash approach to even going as far as to hire one of the teen models to actually pretend to be her new boyfriend, just to spite that little fuck. Dude, it's actually really funny. It's cheesy, I know, but I think, if for something made by Chris Columbus, it definitely fits his optimistic motto very well. And unfortunately, the only character that really seems to be a little bit underdeveloped is Luke, the main father, played by Ed Harris. And I kind of understand that. It's really about, the titular stepmom, as well as, the maternal mother figures and their relationship with their kids. Not so much Luke. I mean, he does have some really good interactions with the kids, and, him struggling with, his ex-wife and his new girlfriend definitely creates some decent conflict. However, it does kind of feel I do feel like they could have gone a little bit further with that, other than just kind of the standard spiel. But Ed Harris definitely did the best job he could, and he got greatly deserved the recognition he got for this, as well as playing Kristoff in The Truman Show, which came out the same year, believe it or not. So, that's pretty cool. I also appreciate the approach to the core subject matter at hand. It's almost like a pseudo-expansion on one of Chris Columbus's previous films, Mrs. Doubtfire. And that film was definitely more focused on the fusion of pure comedy with dramatic scenes spliced in here and there. Stepmom's definitely meant to be taken a lot more seriously. But at the same time, it still encourages a more optimistic outlook on these rather confusing and sometimes devastating scenarios. And we do endure the pain and the observations. At the end of the day, things will eventually heal and you will adapt to the new lifestyles. I mean, there's enough comparisons to be made, but not so much to the point where it feels like the same movie again, but with more mopey moments. And at the time, that's what I felt about the film, when I was a kid. Obviously, I was more interested in Mrs. Doubtfire because it was just funnier and sillier at points. I don't know, there's maybe just a certain timelessness to that as a family film, and Stepmom is, well, I guess it's more aimed towards an older crowd, especially those who prefer to watch more award bait type films. But I'd still really appreciate the fact that it does kind of handle the topic of new families and new lifestyle changes. And even though it's not super apparent in this one, obviously the whole plot line of Jackie secretly having cancer is definitely the main driving force by the second half of the film. That whole idea of divorce playing a major factor into this storyline and the character's development. I really appreciate that Columbus wasn't just trying to remake the same movie again. He did that with Home Alone and Home Alone 2, where he just basically did the same thing again, and nobody really seemed to really like that at all, even though Home Alone 2 has kind of become a bit of a classic in itself. But I still thought it'd be a proper comparison. I still say you should at least give it one watch. As of now, it's on Stars, and it honestly rotates, so who knows when it's gonna be off or when it's gonna be back on again. If you have it, please go check it out. A lot was poured into this film purely just from watching the performances given here alone, and the direction as well. It's not necessarily the most memorable drama out there, and it really could have benefited from having more of a unique identity with its plots and characters, especially with the main character, Isabel. I kind of wish they did more with her and her passion of photography, integrating that into the plot line, especially since she's the title character technically. They really should have done something more with her, but otherwise, I'd still give it an easy 7 out of 10, and I just really wanted to talk about this film because it really is an interesting case study on dramatic filmmaking. There's a lot more to cover, but I'm not going to talk about them here due to the fact that it may seem inappropriate to really go in detail for a smaller video like this. But be warned, this isn't going to be the last time you'll see this movie be talked about here on Media Mementos, because oh boy, there are some plans. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess I'll take this time to thank the Patreon executive producers, Leaf Razor, Breeziel, Azarius, my boy, Sophie Burgers, and Tanner Kapishki. If you would also like your name to be read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then please consider donating to the Patreon. A link will be in the description below, and I promise, next time I will actually be doing a legitimate horror-based video on a really bad movie, naturally. So, yeah.